Hi everyone, it's Professor Abii here. As you can see today, I'm outside. Reason being, I just figured it's a nice day, nice morning, and I kind of wanted to, I kind of wanted to, do something a little bit different. Obviously, it gets a little windy, so sometimes I have to kind of hold on to the stand. Might be a little shaky, but hey, it's a little different. Makes it better than just being in my home office and communicating with you guys. Well, I hope everyone's safe and well, and I hope you guys are doing okay. This week I decided to do something not too usual with the assignments because I was just thinking about how we're all kind of trying to cope, not just with the whole COVID-19 um, pandemic going on, but also how we're coping with learning as well. And I was seriously, just thinking about you guys. I believe it's a tough adjustment. No one's really gone through anything like this before, and I'm just wondering how you guys are coping. I hope everyone's doing okay, having to, kind of like stay at home. Those of you who do work, not being able to go to work, it's tough. It's tough, but we're all definitely going to get through this. So I do want you guys to just stay strong and know that this too shall pass. This will eventually go away. But some things will change. Definitely, there's going to be more online learning. So that's something that we know is definitely going to stay. Um, um, you know. But anyway, this week we are talking about information systems. That's our topic, the chapter this week. The assignment, the lab that's going to be due this week, I'm going to actually extend it. And by that I mean that it's now going to be due on Tuesday instead of on Sunday. And the reason being is this: I had not made it available because I didn't want to give you guys the usual assignment. Like I said, I was thinking about this whole COVID thing, and so I've put together an assignment that really is an essay on how you guys are coping with the whole COVID situation. So what you're going to do is write a two-page essay on how you're adapting uh, to the COVID-19 situation. Already, we've got the online discussion, which is pretty much on the same topic. So everything should, I guess, flow from there. Please do get on the online discussions. It's the only way that I can really know that you guys are attending class. So just pop in there, write a few words, go back and forth. I'm trying to make the discussions a little bit more interesting. Um, so please, and it's 50 points. You don't want to lose those 50 points, okay? So let's get on those online discussions and make sure that we are interacting. Remember, you need at least 3 to 4 interactions, more if possible. You find that if you really get into it, you can get up to 5, 6, 7 interactions going on. So, definitely, I'm definitely asking you guys to please get on the online discussions. Some of you are also missing the assignments. If you have any issues, like I've said before, let me know so that I can take that into consideration. For those of you who were not able to do the last Microsoft Access Database assignment because you had Mac machines, I do have an alternative assignment now that I'm going to make available for you guys. So you're not going to lose any marks, like I've said and I promised, and I'll have you guys do that to make up for that. Let's talk a little bit about this next chapter, chapter 10, information systems. I'm just gonna do an overview of this because it's quite in depth. Okay, the learning objectives are explaining the functional view of an organization, describing the different types of management levels, describing how information flows within an organization, describing computer-based information system. Pretty much what that is, guys, is the fact that compared to say 20 years ago, now in organizations, pretty much everything to do with information is computer-based. I mean, think about where you guys might have worked before. Okay, when they're sending information or trying to get information to the employees, it's computer based. It's either going to come by email, maybe by text, or some other electronic means. 30, 40 years ago, they would have to call all kinds of physical meetings. People would have to come into the office. And even now, think about what's happening with this COVID-19 stuff. A lot of people are working remotely, but they're still able to have meetings. Information is still flowing within organizations. My wife works 100% remotely now with the federal government, and they're having meetings every day, either using Zoom or WebEx or GoToMeeting or some other form. So we know that information flows do not stop, and nowadays they're more computer based. That's what the book is trying to say. Number 5, distinguishing between transaction processing systems, a management information system, decision support system, and an executive support system. I'll just go over that real quick so it doesn't sound too confusing. A transaction processing system, guys, is pretty much the low-level way of processing information. So when I say low level, think about a McDonald's and how you go through a McDonald's drive-through. Okay, you pay for your food. Whoever's selling you the food takes your order, punches the information into a machine or a computer. That information gets forwarded to whoever's at the back area of the restaurant, and as it gets processed, they cook your food. Who knows with McDonald's? I don't know if it's pre-made already. Sometimes they're making it as they're cooking it, and then the order gets processed and it comes back and you get your food. That's a basic transaction processing system. Okay, it's a transaction and it's processed as such. As we know, some companies are better at doing this than others. I've noticed that when I go through, I guess it's Chick-fil-A, they're a lot better. They have adapted their system where it's a lot more efficient. I notice now what they do is they have someone standing outside, so they take the order even before you get to the window. And so as you get to the window, you're already getting your food and anything else that you've ordered. So, a lot more efficient. But it's the same process. It is a transaction processing system. The book also talks about a management information system. This is a little bit different. This is where you have information going back and forth between different levels, tiers of management within a company. So think about it like this. You've got supervisors, middle level managers, and maybe the CEOs of a company. All right. So the information might come from a CEO to the middle level manager, saying to, for instance, maybe the company has to ensure that as they punch in every morning, maybe they have to give their social security numbers. I'm just pulling stuff out, out of the air, but I'm just trying to, use a good example. But those orders would come from the CEO, probably go down to the middle management, and then middle management will then forward that information on to the supervisors. Okay, so that would be your example of a management information system. Also talks here about a decision support system and an executive support system. I'll talk a little bit more about the executive support system. All right, so let's use the President of the United States. He's the chief executive of the country. We're talking about Mr. Donald Trump here. And he has to make certain decisions about what happens in terms of the pandemic and how certain things should be done, um, who has to reopen the country, so on and so forth. Now, yes, he gets to make the executive decision. However, he relies on a series of either managers, people who manage the different, maybe Homeland Security, his Secretary of Defense, his Secretary of State. Those are the ones who provide him with the information with which he needs to make those executive level decisions. So that's your example of an executive support system. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, Homeland Security, Director, all those people form part of what's called the executive support, okay, to the president, and eventually he has to make those executive decisions. All right, so that's a quickie example of what that is. Distinguishing between office automation systems and knowledge work systems. Well, over the years, you know, we as a people have developed systems that kind of help us do our work on a daily basis. These systems are called office automation systems and knowledge work systems as well. I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on. So let's turn over more into the book. First page here talks about different types. And guys, ignore the noises. Like I said, I'm outside. I'm doing a little bit different today. So like I'm hearing a car engine start now. I'm just going to talk a little bit louder so you guys can hear me. All right. So first page, on page 245 of the newer version of the book, shows different functions of an organization. It lists 5 functions. One is accounting, marketing, human resources, production, and research. So accounting, I guess we're all pretty much, we should all pretty much, know what accounting is. Okay, the bean counters, the financing of the company. Okay, without the accountants, we wouldn't know what's going on with the finances of the company. Okay, so we've got accounting. We have marketing. Of course, you do need marketing. If you didn't have marketing, you would not be able to market the goods of a company. Human resources, those who are responsible for employing people in the company, making human resource decisions, who gets hired, and of course who gets fired. And also, if you have any problems within the company, who do you go to? You go to your HR section. Okay. Production. All right. What's produced in the company? Who decides what's produced? How is that information given to workers as they produce different goods? And research. This is probably becoming one of the more important phases of the functions of a company. Because if you don't have adequate research, how are you going to know how to run the company in the future, for instance? Take a company like Tesla. What would Tesla be if they didn't have one of the best research divisions in the world? All right, they've got to research different types of battery technology, what's coming up, how good are the batteries that they use now. They've got to research the different issues. For instance, recently, I think about a year ago, Tesla had a problem where their batteries were exploding. I mean, you'd buy a brand new Tesla, take it home, and then wake up in the morning and find out that that battery had exploded overnight. So one, it was a safety issue. Two, it affected their profits because people, stopped buying those cars when they found out that those batteries were exploding. So research is extremely, extremely important in today, and most of the research is computer driven. They've got to do all these types of data analysis in terms of research, comparing past to present scenarios to future scenarios as well. Okay. All right. Turning over, book talks about different types of management levels, from supervisors to middle management to top management, and it gives a kind of a pyramid. If you look at figure 10.3, it shows the 3 levels of management. Okay, top management, middle management, and supervisors. It shows supervisors at the bottom level. middle management in the middle, and the top management at the top. So obviously we all know that the decision making comes from the top. It gets filtered through middle management, and the bottom level are the supervisors, who end up being the ones who have to execute the decisions that are taken by the top management and the middle management. Now think about this. How does this work with computers and information, and how does the information get passed down? In the past, what would happen was you'd have these meetings, physical meetings, where the information would get passed down, by word of mouth. Okay. Nowadays, it's not strange to have management give you decisions that have been taken just by email. We're even seeing these days where people have been fired by email, not even called into a physical space or room and said, hey, this is what's going on. I don't think your work is good. Probably time for us to part ways. What's happening these days is you now have people being fired by email. So that's part of the whole role of computer-based activity with regards to management information systems. Next, page 247 talks about information flow, and it really questions, how does information flow within organizations? How does information flow effectively? If you look at figure 10.5, it shows that information ideally flows from top to bottom and from bottom to top. That's not quite true. We all know that information tends to flow mostly from the top to the bottom. And let's take an example. You work for a company. You see that there's something wrong with the way they're doing things, and you want to get that information up to top level management. Do you guys think it's going to be easy to get that information? Who's going to even listen to you? At the most, you might be able to get that information to your supervisor, but in most cases, what I find is that it goes nowhere. Now, you are finding some companies who are doing a better job in terms of making sure that information from the workers gets up to the top level decision makers, because they've decided that it's a good thing. And it is a good thing, getting feedback from your workers, because those are the guys who are on the ground, who know who know what's going on. They've got a feel for the market, a feel for the people, and they're the ones who top level decision makers in a company should really be listening to when it comes to feedback or getting information from the marketplace in terms of what's happening, and being able to make good decisions based on the feedback they're getting from their workers. Okay, but that is a problem, and ideally the information should flow back and forth from top level management to supervisors, going up and coming down. But what we tend to see in reality is the information flow just tends to be downward, coming from the CEOs down to the supervisors, and not going upwards. And that's wrong. But some companies are doing their best to make those changes. All right, turning over to the next page. Page 248 talks about computer-based information systems. All right, so this is where the book lists the different information systems that we talked about at the beginning, which was a transaction processing system. And I gave an example of that. I used the example of a McDonald's taking orders. Okay, any fast food chain has what's called a transaction processing system. Okay, take orders, the order goes to the bag, comes back. Could be a fast food chain, could be a restaurant, could even be a drive-through oil changing facility. That would be your typical example of a transaction processing system. Talked about the management information system, MIS. Okay. Now, what tends to happen is when you have a transaction processing system, once those transactions are processed, that information now goes up through the management information system. Okay, so ideally, the managers make their decisions based on the information that they have from the transaction processing system. And the decision support system says here provides a flexible tool for analysis. So these middle level managers, okay, will analyze the information that they've got from the transactions, okay, and then use that information once it's analyzed to make decisions, or use that information to pass on to the executives in the organization. And of course, we talked about the executive support system, and I use the example of the president having to make decisions. You probably could also use an example of a general in an army who has to make executive level decisions based on the information he gets from his lieutenants, his colonels, down the line in the organization that he's running. All right. Well, that page 249 goes a little bit deeper into the transaction processing system, as does page 250. So I'm not going to go into that. I would definitely recommend that you guys read 249, 250, 251. The one thing that I'm going to talk about here is the different types of reports in the management information system. So, a periodic report is a report that's produced, I guess, at regular intervals. Give you guys an example. When I used to work for the Controller of Maryland, every morning my department had to produce what's called a periodic report. So this is a report that we produced every morning. Okay, that report pretty much was a summary of what had happened the prior day. All the transactions, all the tax returns that we had processed the prior day, we had to report those returns to management. Had to be done every morning, 9 a.m. Okay, if you missed it, you were in trouble. So that's your example of a periodic report. It's either done every morning, maybe it's done twice daily. It doesn't really matter how many times. But what makes it a periodic report is the fact that it has to be done at a certain time and a certain, interval, say maybe daily or twice daily, something like that. Next thing here is an exception report. So think about this. You run a company and you kind of want to know when something goes wrong. For instance, if you have 3 franchises and you want to know when one of the franchises has lost a lot of money on a single day. All right. And what you would do as a CEO of that company is to ask for an exception report, because that would be an exception. Okay. If the 3 franchises are supposed to be making money on a daily basis, and all of a sudden one of those franchises loses tons of money on a single day, and it could be due to something. Maybe it was due to weather-related problem, or the fact that maybe for some reason that particular store had to close down on that day because there was, let's say, maybe like a plumbing problem. Okay, so you would ask for an exception report, because that's an exception. Okay, so you're the CEO, you say, give me an exception report for Tuesday of last week, because I'm just waving to my neighbors there, guys, because I need to have this information. Okay, so that's an exception report. The opposite of a periodic report is a demand report. So what's a demand report? A demand report is when something, not necessarily when something goes wrong, but let's say you own a company and you want someone, or you're having someone come to buy the company. Okay, this is your time to cash out. You've had this company for 5 years, it's making money, and all of a sudden, some people approach you and say, hey, we want to buy your company. It's a great company, it's doing very well. It's got everything that we need, and we want to buy you guys out. However, we need to find out how much your company has made in the last 1 year. All right. So as a CEO of that company, you may now ask for a report that shows the profits of the company for the past year. That would be a demand report. Okay, so I'm the CEO. I'm demanding. I want my accountants to produce a report showing me how much the company has made last year. It could even be the last 6 months or something like that. Hmm? So that would be your example of a demand report. All right, page 252 talks about the decision support systems. I'll just have you guys read through this. It says here that the decision support system enables managers to get answers to an unexpected and generally non-recurring kinds of problems. Okay, so unexpected problems. Well, let's take for example this COVID-19 pandemic emergency. This would be a typical example of where you probably would need to use your decision support system because it's unusual. Okay, it is unusual. It's not something that happens on it normally. So you'd probably need to use a decision support system, DSS, to solve that problem. Okay. Page 253 talks about the executive support system. And we already talked about that. I gave examples, for instance, of the president using an executive support system, gave examples of how he would have to depend on his Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Department of Homeland Security head to, to make decisions. Okay. Book now talks about other information systems. I'm now going on to page 255. Office automation systems. These are designed primarily to support data workers. So who are data workers, guys? Well, you're talking about people who, administrators, okay, for instance. These are your typical data workers. So they're not like scientists, but these are the workers who kind of make things run on a daily basis, okay? And increasingly, these data workers are becoming more reliant on information systems, more reliant on using computers to ensure that the work that they're doing gets done in an efficient way. The book says here that office automation systems are designed primarily to support data workers. These systems focus on managing documents, communicating, and scheduling. The documents are managed using word processing, web authoring, websites, desktop publishing, and other image technologies. So your typical person who uses Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, maybe even Access, those would be considered data workers. Okay, knowledge work systems. They use specialized information systems called knowledge work systems to create information in their areas of expertise. So these are kind of more specialized guys. You're probably talking like scientists, geologists, some types of information technology, maybe even cybersecurity. You're talking more specialized type of workers for this. All right, and we are now coming to what's called expert systems. Okay, also known as knowledge-based systems. The book says it's a type of artificial intelligence that uses a database to provide assistance to users. I'm trying to think of an example of this, and I guess one example that comes to mind, let's say weather systems analysis. And I kind of forgotten what the name of that particular science is. But these are the people who would probably use what's called an expert system. Okay, it's not general. You can't use general knowledge for this. You definitely need expert knowledge, specialized knowledge. You need people who have particular knowledge about, weather related systems, how they work, how they don't work. And as we know, weather related systems have become increasingly reliant on technology. I would probably say over the last maybe 20, 30 years. I mean, that's how they're able to now project what the weather will be in the next 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Um, as a matter of fact, in this space, in terms of weather predictions, they're actually becoming more reliant on what's called supercomputers, because these are the only computers who can churn out and do that kind of heavy calculations that's required to give all that specific information with regards weather projections, predicting what the weather would be in 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, or so on and so forth. Um, so, in terms of expert systems, that's kind of what you have. All right, so I've gone through chapter 10, information systems. I did what I would call an overview. Definitely, I would recommend, reading the chapter through, so you kind of have your own idea of what it is. The chapter it's a little bit more in depth, so you may want to read this over more than once. And we do have questions come up on this chapter on the exam, so you definitely need to have an understanding of what the different types of information management systems are. But I've done my best to kind of describe them to you in an easy, well, kind of easy way. So hopefully you have a general understanding of what these are. All right. All right. I guess I will be talking to you guys next week. Once again, always stay safe. And we're going to get through this. All right, guys. See you. Bye.